Today's lesson starts with we're going to be working on convex and concave. And so let's just do a little bit of a warm up to talk through that. So here's the shape we're going to work with today. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute and I want you to warm up with this shape. And I'm just going to Here's one way to make this shape. If you're drawing a circle, if you ghost most of the circle and then you just let the line show the one part of the line. So you'll notice that my cursor travels in a circle, but then I just let the line hit. And that's a nice way to have like follow through. Okay, so we're just warming up with these lines. It's very comfortable. Here's another warm up. You can go How about this one? So we'll notice that there's really three kinds of moves that we can do. We can go that makes me think of this, like little U's in cursive. The line has a kind of a fun rhythm to it. And that one is this one, kind of in reverse. We can work to there's that kind, then there's this. Or that. But for now, let's keep it two lines. So this line, in some sense, is kind of elegant, where this is kind of funny. That has like a sort of humor to it. And this gesture has there's a kind of an elegance to it. Okay. And then we already talked about we have this. All the lines kind of collaborating, going in the same direction but moving around. Okay, so this is just getting us warmed up, and let's get started then in earnest. Now let's go into a little box and start to think about these a little bit more directly. So starting with 2, we'll go 1, 2. We'll make another box. And let's reverse that. 1, 2. And we'll make another box. And we'll go 1, 2. And then we'll make another box. Reverse that. 1, 2. And from these, we'll go like this. Okay. Now, let's take this one. And I want to start with that. And now I want to add an ellipse. And an ellipse. And an ellipse. And an ellipse. Okay. Now we get the ability to look at this form in perspective. So we went from a line here to a shape here, right? And now we've got a form. And when we get a form, we can start to build perspective. So I can take this shape and I could look at it. I could go, and you see by making the ellipses wider, I move it into perspective. I could go like this. See how I've laid it down on its side? Here's the connection point. So we're really we're drawing these little macaronis. That's what today is all about, is drawing macaronis. And we can start with an ellipse, or we could start with a line. Either one is completely fine. We can alter the size, like I'm making these ones short. We can build in overlaps. You see how I've got an overlap here? Okay. I can gradually, I can alter shapes in like very subtle ways. Like I could take the top one and I could say the top one is going to come to a really skinny part. And then this one is going to come out to a wide part. Here, this one will insert into here. See how I've managed to make an insertion? Going to go around with this ellipse. Okay. Could go from big where it's consistent but big to small. Oops, wrong way. And you can see that this one is inserting into that one. Okay, so we just took this one out for a ride. And that one includes this one. So now let's go for this one. How does that one go? So we could go I'm going to lighten that part of it up so that you can see. There's an ellipse along the bottom, and switches out to another one, and there's an ellipse along the bottom, and it closes in. This is invisible, so I'm going to lighten it slightly. And we have ways, let's see. So these are fun forms, and then we have ways of reinforcing them. We've been studying like the cross contour. So anytime we have something like this, we can put a little rubber band around it, and that reinforces the shape that we're trying to express. So this would have to become invisible there. And here I want to put a cross contour on the outside of it. Here's an overlap. Those are really important in terms of drawing perspective. Overlapping is, there's 5 ways of showing space, and overlapping is one of the most important of them. And here's the little rubber band snapping around it. And there's the little rubber band and the rubber band and the rubber band snapping around them. Here's a rubber band going around the rubber band, rubber band, the rubber band, and the rubber band. I'm going to leave it off the invisibles. The invisibles are like drawing all the way through to the other side of it. There's a rubber band. Okay. Rubber band, a 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 rubber band. And that makes this guy is invisible. Rubber bands. And that you see how nicely that increases our sense of form. And another way that we have of reinforcing these is we can shade them. So we could say there's a light source coming from here. And if the light source is coming from there, this side of the form would be in shadow, right? Or lit by not the main light source. The main light source is coming here. And I can use these cross contour lines to suggest a shadow on this side. Okay, so here if the light source is coming from this direction, here would be a cross, here would be the shadow. And here would be the shadow. And here would be the shadow. And notice how the cross contour lines work like those rubber bands. Again, reinforcing the form. Actually, the light is coming from the other side. The light is coming from over here. And this is really good shading practice. Starting to really build the ability to manage cross-hatching in a sensible way. When cross-hatching is good, it reinforces perspective. And this plane would be out of vision. of light. Oop, here I got this wrong. In this case, the light switches over to the other side. It's kind of fun. And here, yeah, that would be in shadow. And then the light switches sides, comes around. Okay, so this is the form that I want to start to explore today. This form and this form. This form. And in perspective, managing to start to work with this form. Here's deeply foreshortened. And here's how we do foreshortening. If you have, let's say I wanted to take this form and I wanted to look at it on its side, which would be something like this. If I wanted to do that, one way that I could do it is I could stack this. I could say I'm going to be looking into these ellipses. So when I'm looking into them, they become more circles, right? And I can stack the circles like this. See how these are stacked? And then connect the line, the shape of them. You see how these curl inward like this. And then if I have another one back here, which is also stacked, and here's the line that connects that, this one is the one that curls as an S, right? And so that makes it so that I can draw it looking directly into it. And that's a very useful tool in drawing in general. This is called foreshortening. Okay, it's one word. I'm sorry. It's one word. So the form ends up being an extension of the line. So we think of a line, we start out with a line that has swoop or bounce, right? So here's swoop and here's bounce. We start out with a line with swoop or bounce, and we move that off into a shape. So here's a shape based on swoop. Here is a shape based on bounce. And now the shape has the possibility of growing into a form. And here's a form based on that shape. And the character of my cross contour starts creating the character of the shape. So we've been working with macaroni shapes, but the shapes don't have to stay that way. We could take a sweep. I could go like this. There's a sweep, and I could do this. And now my macaroni has become more of a sort of duct or something. But at the same time, I like to take rubber bands and stretch them around it. And this generates perspective as well as creates convincing form. And here I could do the same with rubber bands stretching around it. This is an awkward shape here. A lot of times in nature, for instance, like a leg. So a leg is shaped like, if you look at a leg in profile, a leg kind of goes like this. And then there's another shape here that goes like that, and then there's another shape here that goes like that. Okay, and this is a circle, this is a round form, this comes out, this is a round form, and a round form, and a round form, and a round form. I didn't really explain this, how to make that. Like, so if we look at a leg in side view, a leg in side view can look like this. There's usually some way of relieving that. There's usually, like, in the case of a knee, it has a tendency to flatten like that. And kind of like there's some form of relief from those in architecture where you have two lines that come together, like at the ceiling. Here's the ceiling and it comes to the wall. There might be a piece of trim stuck in between, and effectively what happens is it smooths the transition, right? These lines are in what's called opposition, and this ends up smoothing the transition. So where we have a form that wants to go from here to another form that wants to go there, very frequently there will be some little bridge form in there that again will turn this into a little bit more of an S and a little bit less of a little bit less of a straight bounce. But the point that it moves, Lanterni, he's a sculptor, a 19th century American sculptor and sculpture teacher, and he calls this a point of rest. He instructs us when we're working on our figure drawings to look for points of rest, to look for these points where the bounce where the bounce is relieved ever so slightly. Okay, so let's take that and let's start to play with it a little bit more. Um, so one thing that we could do is we could generate little people with it. We could say, okay, here's a little, and you can see in the master sketches that I provided. So you can start out with a line that would be like an S gesture, right? And we're not going to worry about getting accurate proportions on these. Um, and here's a little person. Kind of macaroni person, okay? And you can see how, like, Maurice Sendak plays with that I included a couple of Maurice Sendak. It's always funny on a kid drawing to have the belly really, really, really like sticking out the way some kids do. And, you know, these can be designed, this can be an S like this, and then you can do a point of rest at the pelvis. And then into the leg, into the top of the leg. And a point of rest as we switch forms, as we switch direction. To the ground. The neck, here we would come up. The neck swooping into, now the neck wants to go like, the neck wants to go the other way. However, coming up the form like this, we have to find a way. You have to do a little bit of this before you can go into the neck, which wants to do that. So I want to put in a little point of rest. And then here's the neck column. And here's the head sitting on top of it. And we can keep it really nice and simple. And if you look at the horse posted by Leonardo da Vinci, the body of the horse is a shape like this. And the neck of the horse is a shape like this. And the head of the horse is a shape like this. Okay. The thigh is a shape like this. And it just goes on and on. There's so many. If you look at the, if I posted, there's a guy, he's standing on a chair, and there's a guy behind him, he's banging a drum. That's a very famous sketch by a French artist named Daumier. So if you're looking at that one, it's at the top left of what I posted for you. The torso of that character like this. The pelvic region like that. The thighs like that. The calves like that. The neck, he goes like this. I can see why. Okay, and the legs were separated into two columns, but that's the essential shape. The man behind him who's banging on the drum, a shape like that. Okay, the man behind him, a shape like this. Now look at how the shape of the man behind him, look at how this shape rhymes with the shape of the drum, right? So it's like the shape of the drum pitches this way and his shape pitches this way, whereas these shapes are going 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a kind of pentameter, right? It's like a kind of rhythm like we have in speech. We have iambic pentameter, and so it's a soft and a hard, a soft and a hard, a soft and a hard. So this is like a soft and a hard, a soft and a hard, right? But here we have like a soft and a soft. And so this part of the drawing will naturally get less attention than the part of the drawing where our stresses have more contrast. Here's another cylinder getting out to, and it is curling again. It's curling to a wonderfully rhythmic drawing. Look at the look at the elephant that I posted. There's an elephant below by Rembrandt. Okay, so the elephant has this shape, which is really fun. So the elephant is a shape like that, which that's a variation that we didn't really explore, but that's a really interesting variation. And then the leg of the elephant is a shape like this. And the back leg of the elephant starts with this kind of shape and then pushes into a very subtle version of an S. It's like it's a very staid version of an S. And up here is just a big spherical form. Okay, the trunk of the elephant, one, boom, two, boom. Okay, there's the trunk of the elephant. Um, Look at, if you go below the elephant to the rabbit who's sitting, there's a little rabbit and he's sitting, and it's out of the Peter Rabbit stories, and the illustrator's name, I don't know it, but it's written on there. So his torso goes like this, at the top of his torso. There's a couple of different ways we could think about it, but one way we could think about it is like this. The top of his torso is a shape like that. His belly is a shape like that. And that nicely corresponds with the directionality of the human spine. This is the thoracic region, this is the lumbar region, and it's curved like that. And then you move into the pelvic region, which is curved like that. And so then we move into his pelvic region, that little rabbit right there, and that's his seat, right like that. And then you move off into his legs, and his legs are funny in that, in general, the thigh muscle will generally come out this way, but he's done an interesting thing where he's dropped it into that, which creates a kind of weakness. It creates a kind of, there's a quality of being old. Like this rabbit has something about him is kind of old. And then out here, point of rest, you see this transition across this form. Here's a transition across this form and into there. And from there, straight away into here without a point of rest between. And it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little funny too. Making things a little uncomfortable has a tendency to make them a little funny. Okay? So, yeah. Um, I think I could end the neck there. And I'll start out with the head, just as if I'm looking at something and I'm going to try to draw it, when I'm looking at the head of that rabbit, one thing that I can do is I can think of it, the easiest starting point when I'm looking at something is to throw a single line in to say that's probably the axis of that shape, then to surround it with a flat line. Here's a flat line. That starts to define what that shape is. You see, it's just been considered as a flat shape. And then to go over that flat shape and start to search for what is the form quality that's happening there. Like, for instance, in this rabbit, we're looking kind of up at that, which is funny because he's a little rabbit. And so it would be like the bottom of a cube would be there. And it's possible that I could say his face is like kind of round, and I could project a kind of round sense of form onto what's happening with his face. And the process of representing what I'm looking at starts to grow. Like, here's his ears, but these ears can be thought of as little cylinders up here on the top of his head. Okay. Let's do a couple more. Okay, So the Toulouse-Lautrec drawing, which is the heavy man, and he's an actor, and he's wiping his eyes, and he's got the red pants on. So we can see the top of his body is represented by a mark like that, and the bottom of his body, the pelvic region, again, a little macaroni like that. Okay. And the Van Gogh drawing next to it, the trees that are next to the Toulouse-Lautrec drawing. So the trees are this wonderful harmony of lines going in all of these directions. He's showing us, I think that these are cypress trees, and he's taken all these like little forms and he's coordinated them into these kinds of marks. And then we've got this really beautiful figure study by an artist that was posted on Pinterest, and you can see, you can, if you look there for forms like this, look for forms that go like this, okay? Look for forms that go like this. Look for forms like in the case of the thigh is doing this, right? And the top of it would be like that, and the bottom of it comes out in the knee like this. Notice how you go from the top of the thigh like that, but then as you hit towards the knee, you start to swoop around, but notice how the top line carries through. So one side of the form has an S, the other side of it has that. So here you'll have one side of the form has an S, the other side of the form just has that. And that makes for, that's really the character of the thigh in that figure drawing. And that's put into, if you move from there into the pelvic region is goes like this. It's a real swift turn like that, and over here it goes like that. So the whole pelvic region has that kind of character. It's funny looking at these connected. Okay, notice the torso. The torso has the top of the torso in this figure drawing that we're looking at. Here's an outward, there are two outward thrusts, and then however, there's got to be some kind of point of rest directly between the rib cage and the pelvic region. Okay, and what happens is the rib cage comes down, the abdominal region, and then into the pelvic region, which itself has this outward pushing quality. So these are like these spools with this outward pushing quality, right? Into the thigh, one, and then here was that, but this was an S. Here was that, and here's the form. The form is this rounded form, and it's this rounded form, and into the neck, and here's the neck. And I included these really, really imaginative drawings by Dr. Seuss. I love the way, like if you look at those Dr. Seuss drawings, they're doing this thing where he takes these, he's got these, here's, it's like a cylinder, and he goes below the cylinder with another one like this. And then another one like this. It's not as rhythmic as a lot of what we've been working with, but then you can take this and you can cut off the top in perspective like so. and this one mounts below it, but I need to encompass it a little bit, and then I'll go like that. Funny contraption. Dr. Seuss is funny. And so we have these cylinders and they're dripping water, which is funny. Okay, and they're sort of stacked on each other. And here's a little drip of water. And that goes down to the little creature, and the little creature's shape, once it finally gets to the little creature, which I don't have room to show accurate proportions, but that little creature's body is shaped like this. There's the thoracic region, into the abdominal region, there, and there's the pelvic region, there, right? And then up into the neck region, which is like that, and it goes along with this, and out into the head. Leg curling around with a form, and boom. Okay. Again, there's a couple more Van Gogh drawings. There's the Michelangelo leg study, and when you look at the leg study by Michelangelo, you can see again we have the we're ending up with shapes like this. Like that comes the gluteus maximus, the butt muscle, is like that into the thigh, and his expression of the thigh is a foreshortened thigh, and he's gone like that to get through the thigh, moving into a box-like structure for into the hamstrings and knee, and then from the knee, again, it's a cylindrical structure down into another cylindrical structure and into the foot, which would be more of a box-like structure. Okay? Foreshortened, totally foreshortened on the other side. And to navigate that foreshortening, sometimes I'll draw the cylinder that I'm, the end of the cylinder that I'm trying to hit, the beginning of the cylinder that I'm trying to hit, and there's the profile, and there's the profile, okay? And over the box of the knee, and then out into this macaroni shape again, and out into this macaroni shape, and down to the floor where there's a little box of the foot. Okay. Okay, so your assignment is this. I want you to do a couple of different things. I want you to start with, actually, I'll do another video that's your assignment, okay? So this was like the lesson, and the next video will be your assignment.